with Startup Canada and Concierge service. Startup School is a program of Startup Canada Live, a monthly webinar series dedicated to the professional development of Canada's entrepreneurs and community leaders. My name is Lindsay McPhee, and I am the Executive and Operations Coordinator at Startup Canada. I am your host for today, and I will introduce our featured guest in just a few moments. Today's Startup School topic is Selling 101. It is presented by Concierge, a Government of Canada program developed by the NRC, National Research Council of Canada Industrial Research Assistance Program, NRC IRAP. Through a team of specialized innovation advisors, Concierge provides free, customized guidance to help you access the most relevant programs you need to grow your business. Our featured guest today is Brad Pinch, an innovation advisor at Concierge Service, based in the nation's capital. Brad has expertise ranging from business development to marketing and sales in a wide range of industries such as nonprofit, high-tech, manufacturing, and marine. Aside from being an innovation advisor, Brad has also held various roles such as the VP of Business Development at Cirrus Computing, manager of worldwide sales and marketing at MAQ Sonar, and executive director for Habitat for Humanity. This is the second time Brad is joining us for Startup School. Thank you so much, Brad. We'll start today's session with a presentation from Brad and then open up the floor for Q&A. You can ask questions anytime using the hashtag Startup School on Twitter or the comments section on YouTube. Without further ado, welcome to the program, Brad. We are thrilled to have you here today.
Thanks. I'm really happy to be here as well, and looking forward to sharing as much as I can with people who are listening today. I'm just going to share my screen so that everybody can see the PowerPoint presentation I'm putting up. So good morning, everybody, or good lunch, I guess. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this PowerPoint. I've tried to keep it fairly short so that we can talk a little bit about how it is that one is able to not just find customers, because customers are everywhere, but basically how to actually get them to get into your product. So today's topic, we're actually going to go and take a look at a few things. First, I really want to talk about what is sales. And the truth is, everybody sells every day, but most of you don't really see yourself selling every day, but everybody is a salesperson of one type or another. The type of sales in a business, we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think it's important to understand that there are different types of businesses and therefore different types of sales, and we'll go over that. Really, though, the meat and potatoes of the talk today is really going to be talking about what I call the rules of the new sales game. And it's not really very new, and it's not really a game, because the truth is that sales have been around forever. I'm an avid collector of books, and I have books from as early as 1812 on how to sell to people. And there are some great books, in fact, that people torn pages out of that were written in the 1920s, like I Dare You, which was by William Danforth, who actually started Purina, the people who feed your dog chow and your cat chow and all those kind of good stuff. I'm also going to go over how it's really hard to be right all the time. So you really don't need to be. What you need to be is alert, and you need to think about how sales work. And then I'll do a little bit of a summary at the end. So here's kind of the big thing. I mean, we're talking about catching customers. Well, we're kind of like, have you ever seen a dog actually go out and catch a car? Then when it does, what does it do with it? Well, at first, I've never seen one catch one, but I would imagine be kind of, okay, I've caught it. Now, what do I do with it? It's a pretty big thing I've got in my mouth. Well, really, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about sales and selling. Customers, in fact, are everywhere. They're everywhere that you are. If you eat, sleep, breathe your business like most people do, whether we're talking about a retail storefront, an online business, or you're talking about a brand new product that you've designed for somebody that you're trying to get out there, or a business where you're actually selling services of one type to another business. This is one of those things that should be in your mind all the time when you're talking to people, is thinking about, are you a potential customer? And if so, how can I take advantage of that? So the real question is not where are the customers, because customers are everywhere. The real question is, what do I do if I identify one, and how do I identify them? So let's talk a little bit about that. First, the big question is, what does a 10-year-old, your mother, a bartender, social worker all have in common? Sounds like a silly question, but the truth is, oops, there we go. They are all selling something. In fact, it's part of our biology. We all sell things every day. A baby cries in its crib because it's looking for something. Really, selling is the art of having a conversation that draws things out. Your 10-year-old, I know that my kids were 10 once. They're all moved up and grown away, so it's nice to do that. But the truth is, they're trying to sell you on things like the importance of them getting a new bike, or the cookie that they want that they can't reach, or a toy or something like that. And they do it in the same way that most people do. They engage you in a conversation. Oh, I really need that bike. It'd be so cool. I'd be able to, those kind of things. Your mother's selling you the path to better behavior. At least most mothers are. At least mine was. I don't know if she succeeded or not, but that's not important. What's important is that, she's really trying to help sell the way in which my behaviors can improve so I could be a better son, right? Or sell the importance of remembering Mother's Day because it was important to her. The bartender is selling the need for a tip. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but truly what a bartender is doing, if a bartender is doing the job well, is that they're making themselves so important that you feel like giving them something extra at the end of the day because gosh knows they don't get paid very much, and that's a great way to go. A social worker is selling a lifestyle and lifestyle changes. And I know this personally, along with being a business person. I actually spent 4 years as a frontline childcare worker. And I actually went from being in shoe sales and the manager of a shoe store to actually working with emotionally and behaviorally disturbed adolescents. And the people think about that as being a huge leap, but the truth is I wasn't selling shoes anymore. I was really selling a lifestyle and a different way of thinking and a way of change. So you and all of us, in fact, are salespeople in our lives if we actually start taking a look at that. So you're always selling something. Selling doesn't necessarily mean that you're beating somebody over the head with a stick. In fact, if you're doing that, you're probably selling incorrectly. So, because selling really is a simple act of engaging. It is a reciprocal conversation, so one that's actually going back and forth, where both parties have a win-win agenda. You both want to be, at the end of it, feeling good about the interaction that you had. The result in you is the understanding if a person that you're talking to really would like to have what you have to offer, whether we're talking about a product, service, or what have you. If you're engaging somebody in a store atmosphere, that certainly is true. Certainly, if you're a hairdresser, this is something that should be extremely apparent when you're talking to your client. How would you like to have your hair cut? Do you like it better long or short, or those kind of things? I mean, these are all activities, right, that are part of the business life. The person you're engaging with, it really is about understanding if you have anything that they desire. That really is what selling is all about in a nutshell. And it sounds very, very simple, but really, if you're good at it, this is what it's about. So sales is never a sprint. It's a marathon. This isn't one of these things where you sort of get in there and you're trying to do it fast, and close as much as you can. Success in achieving sales, and in fact, success in selling any part of your business, whether we're talking about selling it to consumers, or we're selling it to other businesses, or we're selling products, or we're selling services, it's really about the art of listening. And when you believe, and I mean truly believe, like internalize that it's more important to understand somebody else or to listen than it is, then actually that's what's happening. Because selling is a conversation. It is not a final act. This is the beginning of your relationship. So there are a couple of types of selling, and I just want to talk about these because everybody believes that they have something different, but really it boils down to sort of 3 types of sales activities. There's B2B, or business to business. So when we talk about B2B and we talk about business to business, what we're really talking about is a business who has a product or service that they're selling to another business. This interaction is slightly different than many of the interactions that most of us are involved in daily when we're buying a muffin, or we're buying our groceries, or we're buying, for me, the latest toy that I want to play with, like a drone or something fun like that. Really, the type of interaction here is really being able to focus on what it is that the business wants. But don't forget that you actually aren't selling to a business. Although it's called B2B, you're selling to a person in a business. So all the rules that apply to sales when you're talking about sales to a person apply to a B2B conversation, because it is people who make up their mind what what they're going to buy and how they're going to buy it. B2C is a business to consumer. And when we talk about business to consumer, typically the first thing that comes to people's mind, retail. Or whether we're talking about online or we're talking about brick and mortar, we're talking about a retail environment where a business is trying to sell something to a consumer. And when we think about business to consumer, the big difference or the large pivot is in fact how it is that we construct our sentence about what it is that our product does. In a B2B stance, we're really looking at solving some business issue or some issue that an individual within a business has that they want to get fixed. When we're talking about a customer, what we're really talking about are two types of things. One, we're talking about this being able to solve a consumer's issue, but we're also talking about emotionality and making sure that the consumer feels emotionally connected in some fashion to what it is that we're looking to offer them. The last one is B to E, or B to everyone, business to everyone. I put this in here because somebody actually talked to me about this recently when we were working with businesses that were looking to do stuff. And often in my job, one of the things I hear all the time is, "Oh, this product, it's great for everybody. Everybody's going to want it. Everybody's going to want to move to buy this, to take it, to do those kind of things." That may very well be true about your product or your service or whatever it is you're offering. I offer up a small piece of advice, and that is focus on either selling to businesses or selling to consumers. The vehicles by which you talk to businesses and talk to consumers are typically different, I should say. The language is certainly going to be different. And the value proposition, or what it is that makes up your product, that makes it most exciting to each one of those clients, is definitely going to be different. So one of the things you can do when you're building your product or you're building your business or whatever is take a look at your segment and try and ensure that you actually have a segment you can speak to. It's great to say that my product is great for everyone. I mean, cars are a great example of that. As an individual, I can buy a car. As a manager of a fleet for a business, I can buy a series of cars. But I can tell you the message that I'm going to want to hear as a business person buying a fleet of vehicles is going to be significantly different than the vehicle that I want to buy for myself. These are the type of things that one wants to keep in mind. So I postulate, in fact, what kind of putting out here is that there really is no such thing as business to everyone. Keep your business so that you are able to define your client better, which actually kind of walks us into some sales delivery models, in fact, that one can take a look at. So when I think about a delivery model, it's kind of the way that we're actually meeting with our customer. Other people call it channel, which is another way of kind of talking about how one speaks to your customer. Brick and mortar is the first one. So this is somebody who has a store. Don't kid yourself, you are selling every single day when you have a store for a couple of things. One is that as a brick and mortar store, you're actually taking the opportunity to put your merchandise out in such a way that people see it and are able to decide whether or not they want to buy it. This is really a silent sales person or a silent sales way, but it truly is a way to move forward. More importantly, though, as a brick and mortar institution, you have to get people in through your door. And when you want to get people in through your door, a lot of that has to do, again, with sales. When you're talking with people on a daily basis, like we were talking about sort of in the beginning there, part of your conversation should be about what it is that your store has to offer. Remember, word of mouth is probably one of the most inexpensive ways of being able to get people into your store and to take a look at your devices. And whether you're talking about mentioning it to somebody who mentions it to somebody at work and who then goes out and does it, or whether you're at a party and you're mentioning it and somebody goes, "Oh, I know a couple of people have been asking about those kind of things." Again, this really comes down to it. Online, I mean, it goes without saying, everything that you do online is about selling your business, whether you're talking about a product, a service, a new idea, or what have you. Online is often can be with brick and mortar, so it becomes another marketing avenue. But online as itself, as a distribution model, has been around forever. Look at Amazon, look at eBay, look at Kijiji. All of these are online sales models. By phone. So here's it may seem like a slightly older way of doing things, but I can tell you there are businesses that are built around this, particularly in the B2B zone. When you have a product that is specific for a business, often the way that you're trying to sell this is on the phone. Anybody who owns a business who has not been called by Staples or by any of any of the numerous number of suppliers for business products, your business really isn't very well known, because typically this is one of the things they do. They try and have a person who is going to help you, and they will guide you to the website, but they'll also be that person of contact that you can talk to in order to put that together. Certainly your cell phone company does it. Ma Bell does it. All of the others, in fact, put that together. So by phone is really a way that one can manage a business. You don't necessarily need an online presence in order to be able to do that. Face-to-face, this is the traditional shoe leather guy who goes door to door. I spent a lot of time as a door-to-door salesman. In fact, back in the 70s, I sold encyclopedias door to door. I've sold vacuum cleaners door to door. These were all face-to-face sales. But in the high-tech world, that I've been a part of as well, face-to-face sales were extremely important. It was about not just being able to see a website, but it was being able to put a face to a name and to understand who it is that's there. So face-to-face is truly a delivery model. And distributed channel, when I talk about distributed channel, if you have a product and it's really something that you're going to market, but you need to get to a lot of people, often it means taking advantage of other people who will sell it for you, or other people who will own the channel for you. Great example of that would be any product that is for the automotive industry. You just can't talk to enough people to make that happen. However, there are tons and tons of dealers out there that if you can get listed with them, then they can distribute it for you as part of their channel. So what types of sales systems are there out there? Because there are sales systems. And there's cold calling. Cold calling is simple. Pick up the phone, dial a number, and start chatting. You'll notice, by the way, here I didn't put robocall, because I truly don't see that as a sales system. That's just an annoyance. You don't know anybody who's been terribly successful doing that. Every time I pick up the phone and hear the bang, bang, this is Captain Stubing, your ship is waiting for you, I hang up pretty much immediately, because really there isn't much there for me to take advantage of. Cold calling, however, is extremely valuable. If you don't know where to find your customers, but you know the type of customer that is. So let's say you're selling something to manufacturers. You have a widget for them that's going to work. Often, in order to be able to find out enough about them and to validate your product and those kind of things, you need to go to something like Scott's Directory, for example, which I have a list of every manufacturer and those type of things, and pick up the phone and make the call and try and connect with the right person and see whether or not your product is resonating. It's also an awesome, fantastic tool for validating whether or not you have the right message, because you can talk to a lot of people sitting at your desk all day long. Where door to door, you really can only talk to a certain number of people face to face. I remember back in the day when we used to look at doing upwards of 60 cold calls a day in order to put a product out. I was involved with the company that sold software into Fortune 500 companies in the US. And every single contact started with a cold call. So dialing up, talking to a secretary, getting passed up the line until we talked to a CEO, who then brought us to a CFO, et cetera, et cetera. It's a valid way of being able to, in fact, utilize sales. The hustle. Now, the hustle is, I think about, when I talk about the hustle, I often think about used car salesmen. These are people who, the basic premise behind the sales system is there's no such answer as no. So you use yes as often as you can until somebody else says yes. And when they finally say the last yes, you close it off. This sales system worked great in the day when customers really were extremely abundant and were not as educated as they are today. And I dare say that it's not as easy today as it was before. And that goes with the foot in the door as well. When I was 11 years old, I sold subscriptions to the Daily Beaver, small little weekly daily rag that went out in Oakville, Ontario. And quite literally, we'd go to an apartment building, we'd start at the top floor, and we'd make our way all the way down to the bottom, and quite literally stick our foot in the door in order to be able to finish our pitch and put things together. This really was about quantity leading to sales as opposed to quality. The hard close. The hard close you'll find in retail. You certainly find it in used car sales. You find it in other places where an ultimatum is part of the close, where you basically are saying, if you don't do this today, then you're not going to get this deal tomorrow. This, again, is a method that is not one that is being well respected these days, and for good reasons. It really assumes that the customer is more interested in getting the cheapest price rather than getting the best value. And I would recommend to anybody who is starting a business today that you should think about your business in terms of value and not in terms of price. If you believe the only way to sell your product is to have the lowest price on the market, you should rethink your product. That would be my my hard piece of advice. Prospecting. Now, prospecting is actually kind of cool. When we talk about a prospect sales system, really what we're talking about is getting somebody to refer you to somebody else. This is kind of like the cold call, but it's a warm call. One of the things that we used to do that was extremely successful was the idea, once we had a client that was satisfied, so we had a service where we were offering consultative services to individuals who were trying to build infrastructure in their company. When we were finished and the client was satisfied, I'd sit down with the client and I would hand them a pen and a piece of paper and say, if you really liked my service and the service that we offered, what I'd like you to do is do me the favor of writing down 3 people who you think are really going to like this service and their phone number. And I'd like you to do one more thing. If you wouldn't mind calling them at some point and letting them know that I'm going to be calling them so that I have an open door, that would be great. Because if you really like my service, you know that they'll like it. And use that as a prospecting method. The other ones are simple, and you can do them in networking events where you meet somebody who says, oh yeah, Jim would really like what it is that you have. Well, great. Would you do me a big favor? Could you send an email to Jim and just do an email introduction so that I'm able to get an in? Remember, being invited in is far easier than trying to do a cold call and get yourself in. So prospecting is a great way to kind of move forward with that. Consultative selling is a model that's used almost everywhere today and all over the place. And consultative selling is everything from a Sandler sales method right through to the spin of the sale. And there are 1,000 ones that are in between, including the Xerox sales method, the IBM sales method. These all fall into the same category as a consultative sell. And what a consultative sell is listening to your client, listening to your potential customer, finding out what it is that they need and having them paint their own solution, and then working with them to try and build that solution with products that you have that have value that can make that happen. This is really acting as a consultant, and it really is taking it. It is a very long sales cycle, but the nice thing about it is that it makes for a very solid customer, and one, in fact, that will then do prospecting with you and do other things. So because you become a trusted partner as opposed to a sales adjunct, right? So being a trusted partner is really key in putting stuff together, and we'll talk more about that as I go through. Merchandising is silent selling, and I think I alluded to this before when we were talking about brick and mortar, where if you want people to purchase things, you really need to kind of put them together in such a way that people see and resonate with them and are called to action to pick that thing up and buy it and put it together. So that really is kind of a way to do that. Now, merchandising doesn't just work with brick and mortar. There are so many people who on their website, when they have a product that they're selling, that they just do a cutout of the product and it's sitting there. If it's not seen in context, that really is not merchandising. That's just a picture of a product. So think about that the next time you're putting those together, because they do become the silent salesperson. When I talk about selling and sales, I'm actually utilizing a lot of these things as I'm putting them together, and we'll talk more about that as we go. So can everybody be a salesman? Yes, everybody can sell. But it's not about trying. It is about the fact that there is no trying. It really is about doing it or not doing it. Half doing it is kind of like not really going to cut the mustard. So this is one of my favorite Yoda expressions, which is no, try not, do or do not. There is no try, which is it. I mean, you're either going to put yourself in this position or you're not going to put yourself in this position. Right? A lot of this is attitude. It has to do with mentally getting over the fact that you're talking to somebody about your business, and it's a necessity for an entrepreneur. So there are rules for selling, and there is a right way. Part of it is that sale is really only successful if both you feel like you won. This is kind of one of my favorite Herman cartoons, and this is from Salesman. This is a great little series that came up in the early 2000s, talking about sales when everybody was kind of doing that. But this really does give an understanding of how things worked. So really, It's not about wrestling somebody to the ground to win. This is about discussing, trying to get out of an argumentative phase. Oh yeah, this guy is crap and I'm great and those kind of things. Really talking about what's important to a person. Which, by the way, is something I didn't put in the slide, but something probably worth mentioning is that never slag somebody else who has a product that's in your space. The first time that you do that, really what you're showing the customer is that you really don't have respect for other people who are trying to do what you're doing. So make sure that you talk up your product and not down somebody else's, because really what they want to do is they want to buy into the positive, not into the negative. Okay, so rule number 1, know thy customer and disqualify all others. So I am a firm believer in the idea that it is not about, it's not about qualifying somebody, it is about disqualifying someone. The truth is that you can try really hard to find your perfect customer. If somebody is not perfect, that's not a reason to start a conversation. In fact, if somebody's not perfect, the thing that you really want to do is you want to let them know that right now they're probably not the right fit. Now, if they believe that they are the right fit for what it is you're doing, whatever that is, then let them convince you. And they will, in fact, if they're really, really motivated to do this. As a person an entrepreneur or salesperson or somebody who owns a store or something, if you waste too much time on non-customers, then you're not going to last very long because you have a limited amount of time. If you know who your real customer is and you know what your real customer looks like, then you are going to be able to do that. So that means be a little bit specific. Describe you don't want to describe your best customer, any customer. You just want to describe your best customer, so be specific. So what do they do? Where do they live? What else do they buy? How old are they? What do they understand? I'm going to stop right at what do they understand. There are a number of companies that I work with who build apps for iPhones and for Android devices. The problem is that often they build these things with an understanding that everybody understands as much as they do about the device and about what is intuitive. If I hear the word intuitive again, I think I'm going to cringe and fall into a small spot. The truth is that when it comes down to intuitive, that's an individual thing. Things are intuitive to me, they may not be intuitive to you. Take the opportunity to, when you are building something like an app or any other piece, to have it validated by somebody who knows nothing. Pick your lowest common denominator as your customer. Your best customer may be somebody who is an elderly person. If they are, they may not know how to do anything but dial numbers on their phone. So is a web app or is a mobile app really going to be helpful to them? If it is, you need to go out and check with them to see that they can actually use it. So it's quite important to do that. The other thing is what motivates them, what gets them up in the morning, what makes them excited, right? Because getting people excited is really important, but also don't worry about finding out what they fear and what they crave. Often when we talk about selling, one of the most successful types of selling is sort of this pain-based, where you find a pain, you find something that is going to satisfy the pain. Well, if you don't know what they're afraid of, you're never going to find that. So asking those questions and letting them answer in their own time is really going to help you. So it really is about being prepared. It's not about being lucky about talking to the right person. It is about preparing yourself, right? So understanding who your customer is extremely important, and preparing yourself by understanding what they look like is really going to make a huge difference as well on your ability to be able to sell your product or service to them. So this also goes to rule number 2, which is know thy product or service. You really want to know how to talk about what you're selling in about 20-second time frame. And if you can, use a story that includes your prospects. And what I'm talking about when I talk about looking at a story that actually puts your customer in the place is something like this, where if I'm doing a business, then what I might start when somebody says, "So what do you do for a living?" I say, "Well, if a person is looking to build a new addition on their home, then I'm typically a person who's called to remove the walls first and salvage everything that can be salvaged. Right? Or I'm typically the person that they call first to look at their financial situation to see whether or not I might be able to offer them a loan in order to help them ease some of the pain in doing the renovations. Or maybe I'm the person who can show them what changes, in fact, will make the largest impact on their ability to sell their house or to sell it, not later, but later. Geez, that's a great typo that I'm staring in the face. Okay, anyway, in retail, it's the placement and the copy that will help. And when I'm talking about copy, I'm not talking about a copy of something. I'm talking about the text that goes with something. So whether we're talking about retail online where you have a little blurb about what it is that your product is about, or something that directs them, or whether we're talking about in a store. I mean, think about how in the old days people used to take a look at Windows design at the old Eaton stores. Everything was in context. When they showed an umbrella, they showed it on a beach with a chair, with somebody, with suntan lotion around it. There was context that was provided with this, okay, so that people could understand what went with what and how they went together. And certainly, if you look at Amazon today, when you look at something, even things that are poorly pictured, there's always when people looked at this, they also looked at that. You'll find the same thing on a ton of the direct sites. So whether we're talking about Newegg or Factory Direct, or Walmart, in fact, or Canadian Tire, or Home Depot, all of them have the exact same piece where they're actually sharing it with you. Some of them are far better at putting things in context than others. Anybody who's ever been to the IKEA website will be able to tell you when it comes to products, they do a great job at showing the surroundings and how that product fits within something greater, and then allows you to drill down into that specific product. But knowing your product well enough to be able to talk about it, or your product or your service, in 20 seconds is really key, right? And putting your customer into the story also is huge in making that happen. So that brings us really over to kind of rule number 3, which is every qualified client wants to buy, but no one really wants to be sold. If it is a qualified person that fits those questions that you've asked and those kind of things, they likely want to buy what you have. So it really does boil down to your technique, to your ability to be able to do that. Keep a few things in mind that are going to really make this easy for you. Number 1 is that people buy from those they like and trust. I think about this and I spent years in sales during, periods when, and of course doing sales like the door-to-door thing, vacuum cleaners, and cycle kids, etc., where the average salesperson who was out there would, basically make up as many stories as possible in order to close a deal. That's really not the way to get all of your sales moving forward, or to be looked at the next time when somebody comes in. I hate those signs that I went to that said, we kill every third salesman, the second one just left. Those kind of things. It's because people weren't being honest with them. People do want to buy, but only from those that they like and trust. So be trustworthy and be likable. I mean, these are very simple things to be. It's not difficult to be either one of those if you act as yourself and in earnest. You don't have to act like I'm doing air quotes here that you can't see, but like a salesman or a salesperson. You really want to first seek to understand, then to be understood. This really is a line from Covey. Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of the Most Successful People. This is really one of these things. The idea is that you want to listen to people. Part of it is because you want to be able to go back to them and utilize their wording when you come back. If somebody is talking about something and you're using a vocabulary that is strictly belongs to your industry and is yours, but the person who's talking to you is talking about from their vantage point what they see as being important, don't flip over to use your words, use theirs, because it builds something called like-mindedness. So like-mindedness is really a key point of being able to get people to understand you and to pull in and get them to understand that you do care about what they say. That's really important to you, how they say things. if you're telling you're not selling. So what that truly means is that you don't want to show off how smart you are. You already know how smart you are. Your customer doesn't need to know that. Your customer needs to know that they can trust you, right? Part of that is making sure that, in fact, your customer is in a position where they trust you and they believe you. The smartest person in the room about your product is not you. It's a person who wants to buy your product. I know that sounds like counterintuitive, but it truly isn't. If you want someone to buy your product, you need to ensure, and they need to ensure, that what it is that they're buying is in fact what they need, and that you need to ensure what it is that they think they're buying, they are buying, because those things are win-win. So this is really not about, talk about being prepared. Be prepared as you can be, but don't rehearse. It's impossible to rehearse for a real conversation. I don't know how many of you have watched sitcoms and those kind of stuff where the guy is standing in the mirror looking at himself and talking about how it is that he's going to say something to his girlfriend, his mother and father-in-law for the first time, or those kind of things, and how it always turns out strangely. Actually, there was a great commercial on the chocolate snack at Christmas where Turtle's chocolate snacks, I guess, where the guy's getting ready to give them to his girlfriend's parents, and he's standing outside the door and he's saying, "Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'd like to present you with," "No, Mr. and Mrs., I'd like to," and of course, during his rehearsal, somebody opens the door and the parents are there and they're listening to him rehearse, which is kind of funny. Don't rehearse. This is really about knowing, right? Deep inside. If you are passionate about your business, you know your business, you're living it, it's inside. Just make sure that you have the opportunity to listen and to see whether or not your product truly fits. And it's okay to go ugly early. Okay, so ugly early doesn't mean put on an ugly face, look terrible, and those kind of things. It really is about letting the customer disqualify or qualify themselves as a good customer. And part of that is, somebody says, "Oh, so you mean your product does blah, 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 or you mean your service is about doing this." If that's not correct, or that's not close, then say, "No, actually, that's not what it does." Or if you have done your original conversation with your potential client, and they say something that leads you to believe that they are not, in fact, a good fit, then tell them. Because that's really the way to gain a customer's confidence, is to tell them, in fact, what it is that doesn't work. And in fact, if they believe they do, they will fight with you for it. So they will actually come back to you and say, "No, no, 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 I am a good fit for your product because here are the things I'm really trying to do. I just haven't explained it well." Then start listening again, because really it's about the listening at that point. It's not about you trying to argue with them more, but going and letting them know early on in the conversation that, yeah, this may not be the right product for you because of the size of your company or because of the whatever it is. These are all good things because they build that trust factor. In the end, people buy for their own reasons, not yours. Understand what their reasons are and learn from it. That's really the key when it comes down to it. So this is my little cartoon on that fact, the multiple personality convention. So the idea is that everybody truly are made up of a whole bunch of things, and you don't know what those are. None of us do. And in fact, people are very different. So greet everybody with an open mind, with an understanding that they may, in fact, or may not be a good customer, but make sure that you understand everybody is not the same. Just because somebody seems to fit within your demographic, they may not fit. So listen. And the only way to find out is to listen, not to talk, but literally to listen. So all of this is about that. It's never about your first sale, right? It really, it really is about not closing this sale, but rather opening a relationship that builds a business. When I mentioned earlier about the fact that what you really want to become is the trusted partner for the person who's looking to buy, that's truly the case, regardless of the type of business, whether it's retail, wholesale, online, you name it. Whether you're selling technology or you're selling shoes, it all is the same. If a person is not appropriate for your product, and you've had a great conversation with them and you have built a really good relationship with them, trust me, if they know somebody who does fit your product or fit your service, they will mention it to them and they will mention it to you. But the only way to do that is to not be looking at this as a one-time conversation. That really is the old car salesmen of the past, right? You paint over the taxi cab with some fancy color, you clean the inside up, and you put enough things in so it doesn't squeak and make a bunch of noises, because as soon as it goes off the lot, you no longer have to support it. That really isn't the way of selling today, and it's certainly not the way of being able to gain customers for the future. The world is a far smaller place than it was even when I started back years ago selling, and everybody will know eventually. The number of websites, if you try and go out and have a search, take a look at number of websites about companies that you don't like, and look for "I hate," and then put in the company name, and you'll actually find searches that bring up those companies that talk about why they hate them. This is not something that you want to have for your website or for your company. You know, "I hate Brad's Consulting." That would be a terrible site for me, like really bad. So it would be a bad one for you as well. Okay, so rule number 4, a deal is not closed until you've helped your customer get out of it. So what do I mean by that? Well, sometimes people are just trying to please you by saying yes, and it is possible that somebody does that, and then afterwards it's like, oh, why did I ever buy this? Oh, I got to think of a reason to bring it back. Stores that are horrible at this, by the way, are ones like Costco, which, by the way, will take back anything. You bring it back 6 months after you've used it, abused it, torn it apart, and those kind of things, because it's useless to you, they will still take it back. It continues to breed customers who actually don't evaluate what it is that they're buying. As a small business, you can't afford that. So what you can afford to do, however, is to take the time to go back over all of the objections that they gave you during the conversations that you have and remind them of it. So whether you have a retail store, or whether you have a product that you're selling to a business, or whether you have developed the latest and greatest in, whatever, or if you have an app that you're trying to get people to take a look at or whatever, ensure that towards the end of your conversation, you're taking the time to remind your customer about the reservations they had to buying what it is that you have, and make sure that you've gone by them and check for new ones. It never hurts. The truth is, you don't want to sell the same product tomorrow that you spent all your time today selling. You've now doubled your effort if you do that, and it's really not going to be helpful to you in the long run as a good business. Your customer now knows you're listening and that you care when you ask these types of questions, and that really is the key, right? This is all about that whole development of relationship and building and doing those kind of things that are important. They're less likely to come back with a complaint or with a return if you take the opportunity to point things out to them that they were worried about in the first place, to make sure that they've gotten past it. And that really kind of is key. Recently I bought a quadcopter just for fun. It was a small one and those kind of things. And I was dealing in a hobby shop, and I was talking to the guy, and the first thing that we had talked about was, it working in the wind, because I really was sort of thinking that it would be important. And that guy, during the conversation, the guy actually was telling me that, you really don't want to use this outside. You want to find an empty gym and run it in there, because it's going to perform so much better anyway. And that the moment this thing hits the ground, regardless of how well it's built, it's going to break. So operating something in high wind is probably a bad idea. After a long conversation, I decided on the model that we were actually looking at, and I was really pleased to see that one of the last things he said was, "So wind's not an issue for you anymore, is it? Because if it is, this still is really the wrong thing for you." I was like, "No, it's not, because you've actually got me thinking that I don't want to play with this outside. I want to play with this inside, and I can do it with the high ceilings in my garage, and I don't have to worry about having something terrible happen to it, and I can make sure it has a light landing, because I'm spending a few $100s on this, and I want to make sure that's right." These are all kind of simple examples, but truly they flow around that. So that really, rounds out just about everything that I have to talk about when it comes to sales, when it comes to selling your business or your products or any of those kind of things. I can be reached in a number of ways. I've got a Twitter account. I'm happy to respond by Twitter. I have a LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and I periodically add to that, and I've joined a number of communities. And I have an email address, and this is my email address at work. As was mentioned in the very beginning, I'm part of the Concierge service. I'm an innovation advisor. as an innovation advisor with a concierge service, we really look for clients who are doing something that's innovative. So it's important that if you call me and you really want me, or you send me an email, I should say, and you want me to engage with you, that you're doing something innovative within your business. We also look for a business to be incorporated first as well, and to truly understand the direction that you want to go in. Now, that doesn't stop you from calling our 800 number, which is behind me here actually on the wall. There you go. There's our 800 number. You're more than welcome to give that a call. That'll take you straight through to our folks who also happen to answer the phone for Canada Business Networks, and can direct you to other services that you may want to use. Or you can call Canada Business Networks, or go to Canada Business Networks online if in fact you're a company that is doing a brick and mortar retail business or any other type of business like that. But truly, if you have something that's innovative, you're incorporated, and you're looking to move forward, don't hesitate to pop me an email, and I'd be happy to help you where I can. And that's all that I have to say today. I'm going to pass this back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Brad, for those helpful insights on selling and building a client base. I just want to let you know that you can stop sharing your screen if you haven't already done so. We're going to open it up to the Q&A section now. We've had a couple questions come in. So the first one we have is, having more than 2 decades of experience with starting new businesses, sometimes succeeding and sometimes failing, what can you tell us is the most important part of building and growing a client base?
I think the most important part of growing and building a client base really comes down to trying as hard as you can to be completely honest about what it is that you're doing and understanding your business. I mean, in the beginning, really, I talked about, know thy product and know thy customer. I mean, these are, if I could etch them in stone, I would. But the places where I have actually failed most often are when I have failed to properly identify the customer, or I have failed to properly identify the market, or I failed to be able to actually explain what my product does in a really short, concise message that people can understand because I'm using too much jargon. So those would really be the things I would focus and concentrate on.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and it helps you develop your sales technique better if you know who you're trying to sell to in the first place. So,
Absolutely.
So the second question we had come in is, what is the most common and least common but equally destructive mistake entrepreneurs make when trying to attract more clients for their startup?
Well, there are a couple things. I guess one of the first ones that I learned early on is, don't try and sell everything you have on price. Price can be important, but it is not necessarily the most important thing. You can always lower your price. You can never raise it. These are so it's really easy to go out there and say, oh, I'm going to offer this for 10 cents per unit when it's costing you 7 cents to make it. That 3 cents in between really is not going to make you rich, nor is it going to keep you in business, because you're not going to be able to afford to do anything. So looking at that is really key. And the other thing, and it comes back to customer again, is don't try and figure out what it is that your customer really wants by asking your close friends, your relatives, your mom and dad. My mother will always say, oh, that's a lovely idea, dear. I'll take a dozen. Okay, even if she doesn't. I mean, the reality is that what we're really looking for here is for an understanding of what your client wants. So try it out on a real client. Try it out on somebody and ask them questions that allow them to be negative when they're giving you responses. So those would be kind of the key things.
So you definitely want that unbiased feedback, someone who's not close to you, who's actually going to tell you what's up and tell you if they don't like your product.
Absolutely. Somebody who is going to be completely honest. I often tell people, talk about your product to somebody who really doesn't like you very much and who might buy the product, because they're going to be more honest than somebody who loves you and will never buy it. Right?
Yeah, definitely makes sense. So another question that came in is, what's your advice for entrepreneurs who are ready to sell their idea to investors but don't quite have a product yet?
Okay, so first, trying to sell something that doesn't exist is really, really hard in the first place. So let's start there. And I know that sounds like an odd way of kind of putting things out there. If you have an idea that you believe is worthy of selling to an investor or putting forward, there are a couple of things that you need to do. One, you need to make sure that idea is in fact original and that it's something that people want. So this doesn't stop you from doing your homework. I did a talk not too long ago on business model canvas and the idea of being able to figure out how you're going to sell the product, who you're going to sell it to, what channels you need, how it's going to make money, the costs involved, and those kind of things. And I invite anybody to take a look at it's, again, part of the startup school business model canvas, or business models 101. It's probably worth listening to that in order to get a feel on how to do that. But understanding the appropriate business model is really key, because that's one of the first things an investor is going to ask is, don't tell them, they're not going to say, so what's your technology all about? Because most times they don't understand it anyway. Or what's your product really all about? What they want to know is, tell me about your product, which is what they're saying is, tell me your value proposition, tell me who your customer is, tell me how you're going to sell it, tell me how you're going to make money, and what do you need from me? Right. So those are the kind of things that one should look at.
Yeah, you should definitely have a plan before you meet with them, saying like, this is why I need X amount of money. This is what I've done, at least to do my research into the customer base that I think I'll have in the market. So there's a lot of research you can do leading up to a meeting with an investor who you're trying to get money from, yeah, for sure.
It also doesn't hurt to go to CIPO. So in Canada, just going to the Canadian Office of Intellectual Property, CIPO, or Canadian Intellectual Property Office, sorry, that's CIPO stands for, got it backwards in my head. But going there, you can do a couple things. One, you can do a free search on your product to see whether or not it exists. And secondly, for a mere $250, you can actually do what's called a I'm going to lose the word, of course, because that would be too easy to remember it all. But essentially, it is beginning a patent. So it's an incomplete patent. It allows you to put in the information about your product, and allows you to put a stake in the ground that lasts for 15 months, so that if somebody is interested in the product, you're not giving away the farm, right, when you're telling them about it. So it literally opens you up so that you can do that. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, that's definitely smart. And a lot of people always talk about getting people to sign like non-disclosures, et cetera. But it's just that one added step you can definitely do to protect yourself before meeting with investors.
Absolutely.
So one other question that came in is, market research is key when building your client base. Is there a lean process for startups who are not yet funded, but looking to explore which markets they should target? So maybe some prep stuff that they would do before meeting with these investors that we just talked about.
Sure. Again, it really comes down to the exact same thing, and that is the only way to find out who your customer is to test it, right? And testing, it can be complex or it can be simple, right? The simplest way to test it is you put together the ideas that you have, you form them into a value proposition that you believe is going to hit off. And a value proposition is really made up of a few really simple things. One is an explanation of how you're solving a specific pain. So what's the real pain point? What's doing that? What is the gain that somebody is going to get from it that's different from anybody else's? And putting those things together, and then going out in the marketplace and validating it against a client. I think that you're the right person for my Kool-Aid. Now, the Kool-Aid that I'm making is made from natural sources, and I'm using these kind of cups, and I'm going to be selling them in an ice cold glass right in the middle of the park downtown. Is that something that you'd be interested in buying? I mean, that's a really good question. And then they say, well, I don't know. And you say, okay, so what would I need to do to change it for you to buy it? Right? I mean, It can be that simple. Or the other thing is set up a couple of websites with fake products on it that are similar to yours and see how many people actually respond to it. That's another way to do it. In fact, you can compare that. You do that often for pricing. It's called A/B sites. So one site is sort of offering it for one price, another one's offering it for another, and you see which one actually gets the most reaction.
Huh, that's super cool. What about your thoughts around crowdfunding as a way to do market research? Because if there's enough people that buy in and you make your amount that you're looking for, then obviously there's been pickup in the market and people are buying into your value proposition.
You know, the number of times that I hear people talk about crowdfunding as being the way to get money, I'm not
saying money. I'm saying market research.
Yeah, but people are talking about it in selling their product as well. Yeah. And the truth is that it's actually quite costly. People don't really think about it, but in order to properly get out to Kickstarter or to Indiegogo can be something that costs up to about $5,000. And the reason for that is you're never really going to be able to get the validation for your product properly unless you have it marketed correctly. So that means that your copy has to be bang on. Typically, you need a video Typically, you need some type of a demo of the product, whether we're talking about a drawing or those type of things. So validating it out in the marketplace that way is an expensive proposition. So although that's true once you get to a point where you've got a prototype in place and you're looking at actually dragging money in, which makes good sense to do it that way, no doubt about it. Just as a market validation tool, if you just stick anything up with a bland old picture and those kind of things, you're not going to validate anything because it really doesn't match with everything else that's out there that's drawing attention. So there are far greater ways to do that. And remember that a sample of people who are interested in your product, you're not talking about 1 million people. In fact, what you're talking about is if your product is suited in your area for 1,000 people, that means you need to talk to 10 who are suspect customers, and that actually is statistically significant. I know, surprising enough, but that actually is. So that's the kind of thing that one wants to take a look at, and it's far cheaper than going out and doing the whole crowdfunding piece. Now, I say that, and then in the next breath, I'm going to tell you one little thing, which is there's a site called Quirky, that's quirky.com, which is for inventors, and you put everything from a diagram on there to a half-finished product, and you can see people who actually go in and say, "Oh yeah, I'd buy that if you finished it." So that's not a bad way because it's cheap and it's easy. And if anybody wants to go take a look at that, please just ping me on LinkedIn, and I'll actually, or on Twitter, and I'll send you the link to the site because it's a pretty half decent site and kind of fun to go to anyway. I go there often when I'm thinking about building something myself.
Well, that sounds interesting. I might just check it out, see if there's anything cool on there. So 2 quick questions to wrap this up. Not everyone is a born salesperson. I know you might disagree, given that you think we sell from day one, especially as children to our mothers and so on. But beyond that, where can entrepreneurs go to finesse their sales skills before pitching their product to get even better at selling, which we all do naturally?
So first, I think that pitching is a little bit different than selling. And I'll just put that out there right away. If you're pitching your product, it really isn't about selling your product. It's about selling the whole package, your company, the people around it, who's supporting things, those kind of things. So to get a good pitch together, we've got tons of resources in Ontario and across Canada. Every regional innovation center across Canada, in fact, across North America, has a program that will teach you how to do a pitch. And many of them also have guys who come in and talk about doing selling. I know that in our area, I'm in the Ottawa area, we have one called Invest Ottawa. Fantastic place. They're often running courses. The other place you can go to is go to Eventbrite. Eventbrite is a fantastic place. Do a search for sales courses. There are sales courses there like crazy. That doesn't mean that they're all great, but it does mean that many of them you can take advantage of. And the good thing too is that they also list ones that are webinar based, and that's well worth going to. So I would certainly take the opportunity to go to use those really simple tools in order to find those resources.
Yeah, I've signed up for a couple webinars, and half the time I don't end up watching them, but at least usually they'll send you the link afterwards and you can watch it after the fact. But it's definitely something I find that you could learn through a webinar, or at least get some tips through it. And webinars don't require as much time to go to places, and you can just watch it at home easily. So it's definitely a good way to go.
Or on YouTube, you can actually take a look at a YouTube thing like Selling 101 or something like that from, I don't know, the startup school. And that would also be a really great place to go.
Yes. And we will be promoting that as soon as this webinar is over. Okay. Just to wrap things up, do you have any final tips for selling and building clients for startups?
Just, believe in yourself, believe in your product. If you don't believe it and you don't think that it's going to do anything, then it really isn't something that anybody else is going to believe in either. The truth is that you're limited by your own ability to be passionate about what you do. If you have reservations, even the slightest ones, they will come through in any conversation that you have, and you will really, cut your own nose off to spite your face. So feel confident in what you do and believe in it. That's it. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll do a final wrap up now, and that is a wrap. A huge thank you to Brad Pinch for joining us for an extremely helpful edition of Startup School. Also, a huge thank you to Concierge Service for presenting this week's class. We will be tweeting the live recording out for you to come back to and reference at any time. Join us for the next Startup School on June 27th. That's 2 weeks from today, when we will be talking about tips for home-based startups. Check out Startup Canada's Eventbrite or events page at www.startupcan.ca/events for more info. Need more startup inspiration? Join us this Wednesday at noon Eastern Time for Startup Chats. We'll be discussing an important topic, mental health and entrepreneurship. And of course, don't forget to tune in Friday for another Startup Chats on tips for home-based startups. Last but not least, be sure to nominate yourself or your favorite startup for the Startup Canada Awards before July 20th. Visit startupaward.ca for more information and to nominate. Thanks again, everyone, and have an enterprising week.
Thank you.